Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers on Fox 54, sponsored by Realtree. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
And let there be football. Welcome in to Move the Chains. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens kicked off the NFL season on Thursday. And congratulations to the NFL because it was a great idea, and the game lived up to its billing. I'm going to go detail by detail about what I think about that game, and I've got some points that you're not going to hear many people make. So you need to make sure you stick around for it. And the second down, listen, there are programs in college football that are getting lambasted, one in particular for not using the transfer portal. And I want to tell you why there are programs that are using the transfer portal very heavily that are in the same predicament and may be even worse off than the program people are killing right now for not using it. And in my nonsense narrative, Jordan Love is phenomenal. And everybody's saying he's the best quarterback in the NFC North. I just don't think that's a true narrative. And I'm going to back it up on why I think there's another quarterback in the NFC North that has been the best quarterback for a few years in that division. And lastly, man, there's a college football coach that's simply locked in as well as his program is locked in. And there's nothing that I think college football can do to stop it at this point. All right, all that and more right here on Move the Chains. But you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with first down. All right. That's for the NFL. Roger Goodell, whomever put this together, all of the inner workings and outer mechanisms of the NFL, having the Chiefs host the Ravens, Super Bowl championship banner, all that type stuff, Thursday night football, it was a success. Point blank, period. But let's kind of get into a deep dive about this game. And I'm going to show you some of the graphics here. And I think the biggest thing was you see that Baltimore didn't have a problem with total yards, and I didn't think that that would be an issue. Turnovers were even right there. But this is not really about necessarily the stats. I have some big points and big picture points that I want to make about this game. First of all, Derrick Henry is going to be a situational star this year in Baltimore. And what do I mean by situational star? Well, you can see on the video here that Derrick Henry was able to take him to the end zone on the red zone. That's what Baltimore is going to be in the red zone. Derrick Henry is going to be phenomenal, but yet Derrick Henry, I don't think, may acquire a lot of rushing yards throughout the season. And even when Baltimore needs him at the end of the game, what's going to happen? They're going to have him on the sideline because you saw Justice Hill, their third down back, on that final drive for the Ravens, and because he is more of the scat back, more of the third down back. So Derrick Henry, I think, will be phenomenal for the Ravens, but I think it'll be more of a situational role when they get inside the 20. Oh, he'll run the ball from 20 to 20 as well, but I think when Baltimore has the opportunity to spread teams out, it'll be more Justice Hill in the backfield than it will Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry will be important. It'll just be more situation. I think a lot of people won't be used to seeing Derrick Henry in that light. Secondly, listen, man, Kansas City does not miss in the draft. Do you hear what I'm telling you? And let me start off with Xavier Worthy. The one thing I love about the game plan that Andy Reid had last night when it came to Xavier Worthy, everybody was probably expecting him to go over the top. First pass to Xavier Worthy be a 60-yard go route or a post route or even something on a slant. But what did Andy Reid do? Andy Reid made sure that Xavier Worthy's first touch was a simple reverse that he was able to take in for the first touchdown of the season for the Chiefs. That's the type of speed that's going to hurt teams from the Kansas City Chiefs this year. Remember when they had Tyreek Hill? He wouldn't just beat you vertically, he'd beat you horizontally as well. So even without having Hollywood Brown, it showed that the Chiefs exactly know what they're doing when it comes to drafting. And let's not stop at Xavier Worthy, because we're going to talk about their left tackle as well. When Kingsley, for the Chiefs, their left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, was drafted in the second round, a lot of people understood what that was, because while the Chiefs, I think, have the strongest interior line in the NFL with guys like Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith, to go get a second-round offensive tackle who in his first game last night against the Ravens defense that was #1 in scoring defense last year. Now, Mike McDonald is gone, but the Ravens defense will be good this year. Don't think that they weren't good last night and it had anything to do anything other than the Chiefs being phenomenal. That's going to show you how the Kansas City Chiefs operate. So not only were they able to pick up a thoroughbred at wide receiver, they were able to go get a dog at offensive tackle, and that's exactly what they needed to make sure they take care of their franchise quarterback and one of the best quarterbacks, I think, in NFL history. Another point I want to make about this game. Lamar Jackson is phenomenal. He is dynamic, but he also needs to be more clutch. Now, listen, Lamar Jackson is one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL in my estimation. I've told you before, Mahomes and Jackson are the only 2 elite quarterbacks in football. And Lamar showed you why he was elite last night. More than 200 yards passing, more than 100 yards rushing, a touchdown. Like Lamar Jackson is phenomenal. But when it mattered most, And everybody's focusing on the pass to Isaiah Likely when Nick Bolton knocked him out of bounds when he had a toe, literally a toe out of bounds, and the Ravens ended up losing this game. But I want to talk about the play before that. When Zay Flowers was streaking through the back of the end zone and he was wide open. Now, I don't know if there was a disconnect and Lamar Jackson thought he was going to sit and he kept going. All I know is the throw was missed because it was behind him. And I think for all of the people who were naysayers of Lamar Jackson, situations such as those are going to be what they point towards. And I love Lamar Jackson. And I told you he's dynamic, but I do think in moments like that, he has to come up and make those type of plays because those are the type of plays that are going to allow you to make sure that you're able to beat a team like Kansas City and get to the Super Bowl, because if you don't make the plays in the situations where Kansas City misses, you're not going to beat them. Think about the inverse. Patrick Mahomes saw a bust in the Ravens coverage on his second touchdown, first touchdown pass, but his touchdown right here to Xavier Worthy, he took advantage of it. He didn't miss it. Lamar Jackson missed his opportunity, and I think, of course, that's the difference when you're talking about a 27-20 ball game. Last thing I want to say about these two teams, though, the NFL should be scared of both of them. Neither of these two teams are what they will be as the season comes to an end and when playoff time comes around. So if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're the Baltimore Ravens, you're excited about what took place. If you're the Ravens, you wanted to beat the Chiefs. They beat you in the AFC title game and they beat you to start the season. But if you're Baltimore, you don't have anything to hang your head about. You went in to the defending champ's house and came an inch away from possibly sending this game to overtime. It's going to be one of the best games of the year, and it was the first game of the year. If this is anything or any indication of what the NFL has to offer this season, sign me up. All right, that's it for First Down. When we come back, we're going to talk about college football and why I think people are overhyping Clemson not using the transfer portal. All right, we'll be back when we'll move the chains right after this. Hey, welcome back. And before we actually get to second down, I always want to take this time first to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for this opportunity to host the Chains. I'm having a lot of fun, man. It's phenomenal. I also want to thank you, the fans. Continue to have people running into me who are yelling, move the chains, and keep going. This thing's going to blow up. So, hey, your enthusiasm, your encouragement means a lot. So I appreciate you taking time to watch. And as always, man, the best production crew in the business, whether it's William, whether it's Hannah, whether it's Hunter, whether it's my boy Josiah. Happy birthday to Josiah in the back. And, of course, the director of the show, Ernest. Everybody, and there are even some people I didn't mention, but the best production crew in the business, none of this happens without them. So shout out to the best production crew. I appreciate you. But let's go ahead and kick it off with second down. All right, look, I'm not making excuses for Clemson. I'm not a Clemson fan. I think sometimes when you're objective, a lot of people think that you root for or root against the team. Trust me, I'm somebody who watches college football at a high level, and I understand it at a high level. So when I look at Clemson, everybody's going to look at the beating that Georgia put on them, and they're going to say, I told you, Dabo has to use the transfer portal. This is why their program's not going where they need to go and not where they used to be. And I'll just say this. One, I think Georgia would have done this to a lot of programs last week. Let's just be honest. Georgia's that phenomenal, and I'm going to talk about Kirby Smart later on in the show. But this is the point I want to make about Clemson. I've said that I think the Clemson Tigers need to use the transfer portal to some degree. I'm not saying they need to try to rewrite history and build their entire program, but I think there are opportunities for them to fill holes a little quicker than they do through traditional recruiting. I think traditional recruiting is important. I think it needs to be done. We look at Auburn, we celebrate them for the recruiting class that they've had. Now, Clemson, 11th this year in recruiting, which is a little lower than they've been, but they still recruit at a high level traditionally with prep stars. But I want to bring up Florida State as contrast to this. Because if you're going to sit here and tell me that Clemson is making a huge mistake because they're not using the transfer portal, what's Florida State's excuse? What is wrong with Florida State and Mike Norvell? Because early on in the season, and I'm somebody that's usually calm, I don't overreact to things, and I'm not even overreacting to the two losses. I'm reacting to what they've looked like in both losses. So you go and get a brand new defensive line through the transfer portal, spend all this money, and yet you can't stop the run. You couldn't stop it against Georgia Tech, and you couldn't stop it against Boston College. And shout out to both of those programs, especially Boston College, for watching the film against Georgia Tech and making sure you understood that they can't beat you up front. Florida State was ranked 7th when it came to transfer portal recruits this recruiting season. 7th, top 10 in the 0-2. And they haven't been even close. And let's even look at their quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, who has transferred twice. So do you remember Nick Saban saying on game day, I believe, that just because you spend all this money, if you spend it on the wrong guys, that's your issue? All I'm saying is you're looking at Clemson and killing them because they're not winning after one game against the best team in the country. And yet I look at Florida State and two inferior teams when it comes to talent they can't hang on the field with, and they have some of the best transfer players in the country. So now what are we talking about? Are we assuming that if Clemson just uses the transfer portal, everything's going to turn around? I told you talent alone doesn't matter. It's all about cohesion. And Florida State is not cohesive right now. And I'll go back to this. So for people that are saying, well, man, you said that they wouldn't have a hangover from last year. This isn't a hangover in my estimation. This is a brand new roster who doesn't have guys like Keon Coleman. This is a brand new roster that doesn't have guys like Jared Verse. This is a brand new roster that doesn't have guys like Jordan Travis. And because the roster has turned over and because they don't have assignment football down pat yet, they're struggling. Could they turn it around? Absolutely. Could they end up winning 8 or 9 games in the season? It's possible. But what I know is this is why you don't put too much stock in preseason rankings. Because to a lot of people, oh man, this preseason top 10 team can't get out of their own way. They can't get out of their own way. And the one thing I was wrong about is I said this was a 3-team race for the ACC. Now it's a 2-team race in my estimation because Clemson ended out of it. See that guy Jordan Love? A lot of people think he's the best quarterback in the NFC North. And when we come back on my nonsense narrative, I'm going to tell you why I don't think that's true. We'll be back and we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back into the show. And before we get to my favorite segment, the nonsense narrative, let me just reiterate what I was talking about when it came to Clemson and Florida State. Everybody understands that Clemson was bulldozed by Georgia. Georgia will do that to a lot of programs, regardless of if they use the transfer portal or not. They're just that good. And that game was close in the first half, and then Georgia pulled away, and I expect that to happen a lot. So let's not act as if Florida State, because they're using the transfer portal, is better than Clemson. And I think that's the only thing I have a problem with. People are assuming that if Clemson used the transfer portal, things would be better. Well, what if transfer portal players, like a Cam Ward that's at Miami, didn't choose Clemson, but they went after him? So let's not assume that just because you're using the transfer portal means that your program is going to be lights out. You've seen it in previous years where it hasn't necessarily happened that way. You've still seen the usual suspects at the top of the mountain, and that's not necessarily going to change. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there. All right. So you know what time it is? Hey, this is my favorite segment of the show. This is an opportunity for me to call out narratives that really just don't make any sense, whether because they're not statistically reasoned well or they're just illogical in my estimation. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but when I can knock it down with facts and other opportunities, it's exactly what I'm going to do. So it's time for my favorite segment. Let's hit the nonsense narrative. Listen, I'll say it again, man. Just because I'm objective and I talk about a team or a player one way or the other doesn't mean I'm a fan or I'm not a fan. That's what it's called of being objective. Jordan Love. I don't think a lot of people give him enough credit for what he did by being drafted by Green Bay. Did Jordan Love ever complain about being a backup to Aaron Rodgers? I never heard it. Did Jordan Love ever come out and was it ever reported that he was a bad teammate to Aaron Rodgers or the Green Bay Packers organization? I never heard it. Did anybody ever hear anything about Jordan Love doing anything other than trying to be the best backup quarterback he was under Aaron Rodgers, learning from a future Hall of Famer, and being ready and putting himself in position to hit the ground running when he took on his role as a starter for the Packers? Nothing. With all that being said, for those people that are saying Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFC North, I just disagree with it. And when I put him up against the individual that I think currently is the best quarterback in the NFC North, now remember, this is something that can change. I'm not saying it's going to be this way at the end of the season, but if you're looking at what's happened in the past few seasons, especially last year, there's no way you can say Jordan Love is a better quarterback at this point than Jared Goff. It's not just about numbers. I think Jordan Love has an opportunity to be better in the future because he is more versatile. He can move the pocket better than Jordan Goff, but Jordan Goff had more completions, more attempts, more yards, and touchdowns and interceptions were pretty much comparable. Jordan Love gets 9 touchdowns. And the Lions were in the NFC Championship game literally a quarter away from the Super Bowl last year. Jared Goff has taken 2 different organizations to the conference championship and has been to a Super Bowl. And he was within a touchdown of winning that game. Why is there so much disdain, in my estimation, or lack of respect for a guy like Jared Goff, who's accomplished more in his career than Joe Burrow has and Josh Allen has? And I don't put Jared Goff as an elite quarterback by any means, but I think he's the best quarterback in the NFC North. And I think Jordan Love will be phenomenal. I think he'll be consistent. And remember, his second year as a starter is not his second year in the league, right? He's going into his 5th year in the NFL, which is why he was able to get the huge deal because of what he did in the second half. This was a guy that sat, man, for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers and took every opportunity to learn and get better, and it's proven, and it looks like he and Matt LaFleur have a phenomenal relationship, and it's Matt LaFleur's offense. Jordan Love is very, very confident in the offense, and it took him not too long after hitting the field. First half was a little bit mediocre, but then he took off. That's growth and progression. So I have nothing ill to say about Jordan Love. I think he's a great young talent. I think he can grow into an all-pro MVP caliber quarterback. But let's pump the brakes on saying he's the best quarterback in the NFC North when you have an opportunity to look at what Jared Goff has done, not just for the Lions, but when he was in the Rams organization as well. This man helped resurrect a Lions organization that has been putrid, even when they had Matthew Stafford. They were good, but they weren't great, and now I think they're on the cusp of being a Super Bowl contender, and I think both of these teams are in that area. But let's not call Jordan Love the best quarterback in the NFC North. I think that title is still with Jared Goff, and until proven otherwise, it's going to stay that way. All right, that's the end of my nonsense narrative. And when we come back, it'll be the final drive right here on Move the Chains. Welcome back into the show, and this is the final segment, so you know what that means. It's time for the final drive. I just want to describe Kirby Smart in 2 words: locked in. And can I say this? When Kirby Smart was coaching under Nick Saban, he obviously learned a lot as defensive coordinator, won championships, and helped develop the opportunity for him to build his own culture at Georgia. But you know what I don't see at Georgia? I don't see Nick Saban's footprints. I don't see his culture. I see Kirby Smart's culture. Kirby didn't go to Georgia and try to be Nick Saban. He went to Georgia and is Kirby Smart, and that's why they're so successful. You know how a lot of the assistant coaches that were under Bill Belichick in the NFL got their own head coaching jobs and tried to emulate Belichick? It failed miserably. Kirby Smart has the awareness and the foresight to understand that if you're not yourself, you won't be successful. And that's why he's able to recruit high-level coaches and recruiters like a Fran Brown and a Dale McGee and some of the players that he has throughout the litany of the NFL. He's that good. All right, don't forget, you can catch Move the Chains not only right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but also on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's at @move_the_chain. Subscribe, like, leave a comment, post a question. All of it's necessary and all of it's appreciated. All right, that'll be it, man. For the best production crew in the business, I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And until next time right here on Move the Chains, God bless.